Hello, everyone. We are here with John Marani, who is our tarot person around here. And John has some things that he wants to talk about. So, John, take it away.
Thanks, Andy. I'm thrilled to be here as always. One of the first things I wanted to talk about was I wanted to talk about different ways to time tarot readings. There are a couple different ways to do it, but I wanted to mention them because um, timing with astrology is something a lot of people know how to do, looking for different triggers and planetary speeds and all that. But timing with the tarot isn't always so cut and dry. So we're going to talk about a couple of different ways that you can do it. And the great thing is we're going to talk about some that are really simple to do and some that are more complicated to do depending on your level of tarot. We're also going to talk about one that uses astrology as well. So if you do tarot and astrology, there's one that actually melds them both quite nicely.
Hmm.
So I thought we could do that, and then I definitely want to talk to you about the sign of Scorpio and how some astrologers look at Mars more and some look at Pluto more, and kind of get your take on that. So those are kind of the two things I want to talk about tonight.
Cool. So, it sounds like with tarot, you want to talk about timing because I've heard that it's hard to time things with tarot. Like astrology's better at timing things. So,
So one of the things that you have to do when you start with a tarot reading is you have to start off by establishing how long a time frame you're using when you begin. So for me, typically what I will do is I will start by saying, "Hey, this tarot reading is going to be about a year." Now, for me, that's typically the longest that I will read someone for. In other words, I'll do a reading that will last for about a year.
hmm.
My reasoning for that is pretty simple. It's because a lot of things can change in a year, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I
I
don't want,
similarly kind of read transits for 6 months to a year, because there's so
yeah,
much changes.
yeah. For the same reason, with tarot, I don't want people to, um, I don't want people to feel like I'm going to tell them accurately what's going to happen like 2 or 3 years out. I think that's asking a lot.
Hmm.
And so what I would say is, um, so I would start off by saying, what's the time frame on the reading? With some people, they come in and they only want me to do 90 days, 120 days, sometimes 6 months. It really depends on what they want. And so I often will ask people like, what kind of time frame are you looking for?
Hmm.
So, but if they don't tell me, usually it's a year. So I'll
Okay.
start off by saying, to help timing with the tarot, I'll only do a reading that will last for about a year-ish.
Mm. Do you ever do a reading that's for like a month or 3 months or, you know,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah.
But if the client requests it, I usually like to give a little more than that. I also do have a policy that kind of bears, on this topic a little bit, is that I also don't want people to be read too often. And I'm going to explain what I mean. So, there are a lot of folks when they first start reading cards, they kind of get into this she loves me not idea for not put too fine a point on it. Like they'll kind of they'll read on the same topic so often that eventually the universe kind of goes, dude, asked and answered. Like
Hmm.
move on.
Hmm. Yeah,
And so
interesting.
my policy is I typically will only read for a person once a month
Okay.
client.
Interesting.
Because I think things have to take some time to actually go by. Now, I will make an exception to that if someone needs a reading on a completely different topic. So let's say someone comes to me and they say, John, I know you just read for me last month and it was about relationship stuff. I just got two job offers today and I need to know which one to take.
Hmm.
Okay. We're talking about different things entirely,
Hmm.
then but the concern that I have, Andy, is that some people will come to me and try to use me as a cheap therapy almost if I
Hmm.
give them that often. And that's not, I do a lot of spiritual counseling through tarot, but that's not I'm not a therapist.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
so,
Well, it kind of begs to, it's like, what is the question of like, what is the tarot reading? Like, if it's kind of like an oracular moment that it's like sacred and special, and if you keep doing the same reading on the same issue over and over, it takes away the sacredness of the oracle, and it just becomes like a philosophical game of like, what do we if we put the judgment card on this issue, and then what you can do, you can pull a card every day on a certain issue, and
yes.
it's kind of a different thing, but consulting the oracle, it has some weight to it.
Right, you're exactly right. And what I tell people is when you're reading the cards, it's that moment in time that you kind of alluded to, right? It's that special moment of, okay, we're consulting the cards about this topic in this particular moment. And if we do it all the time, then it loses that specialness. And then the question becomes, well, what wisdom is there at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do know people who do daily tarot pulls as like a general, what is my day going to be like?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with that. Like that I'm okay with. I know some people do that. And to me that's good because people will combine it with journaling. So they'll say, "Okay, I'm going to pull a card in the morning and then at night I'm going to think about the card and I'm going to think about what I saw during the day that makes the card resonate for me."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I like that a lot. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
But like you said, the same reading about the same thing every day, like no, I
So
don't
a
think.
card per day is kind of like the duration of the reading is 1 day, whereas you have these like readings that have the duration of 1 year. And, I think that's interesting to put a reading in a time container. And, because in some ways that I don't know, like that. Yeah, I mean, I never really thought about that timing much with tarot, actually. I never really even knew that you guys did that. But I guess when you think of people doing a daily reading, that is a reading for a day.
Yeah, and what is really interesting is that people, because they have all kinds of different needs, they can say, I'm only looking at a 3 month period, or oh, I'm only looking at 6 months. And so it helps to kind of it helps to keep things more a little bit more focused and specific,
Yeah.
which I happen to like. But yeah, I feel like if people only need a certain amount, and I don't want to overwhelm them, I would rather do that. Also, that's another reason why people should use smaller tarot layouts, because sometimes some of those bigger tarot layouts, the Celtic Cross is the one that comes to mind. Well, a
hmm
lot of people know how to do that one, and it's a really big layout. But that's not one you're going to do once every 2 weeks, you know.
Interesting.
One of the most interesting ways that you can use tarot is there's a great tool that I encourage people who are learning it to use, and it's a daily tarot spread, but it is combined with a monthly and a yearly. So to do the activity, you have to have a tarot deck that you only use for your own personal work.
hmm
It's not to read for anybody else,
hmm
to keep it aside for only your use for a year. Okay.
hmm
And what you do is you shuffle the deck like you normally would, and you decide what the best day is. I typically, for people who are more of a Wiccan path or a pagan path, I usually tell people Halloween is a good day to start it. Uh,
hmm
but if not, first of the year, like on the new year,
hmm
what I'll typically tell people is on that day, you want to draw 3 cards. The first card is a card for the whole year. So it gives you a whole year of, hey, this is my card for the year. These are the themes that I'm going to see for the year.
hmm
Then you pull a card for the month. So on the
hmm
first day of the month, you'll pull a card.
hmm
And then on the first day of that month, like if it's January 1st, you'll pull a card for the first. And
mm.
the day card you'll change every day. And then the month card you'll change at the beginning of every month.
Wow,
So
it's kind of like a solar return reading, kind of, but
yes,
then like a lunar return reading and then a
yes,
daily
exactly
reading.
right. You're exactly right. If we were going to put it in astrological terms, that's exactly what it is.
hmm
Yeah,
Well, that would be interesting to have a card overarching your whole year. So if you got like the Tower, you got the Ten of Swords, like you just be like, oh, this year I don't know. I guess you'd have to keep a mo positive mindset about that card, but
yeah. You,
yeah.
you would, and then you would have to think about, what is this card supposed to teach me? Like what am I supposed to learn from it? And as you said, in as positive a way as possible. Because even a card like the Ten of Swords, right?
Hmm.
That's a, I mean, that's a bad draw. I mean, that's a tough card to deal with.
Yeah.
But if you've got a lot of crap going on in your life and you just want it to be over, the Ten of Swords is that it sucked, but it's over.
Oh, interesting.
So because in tarot, the aces through the tens represent cycles. And so the 10 represents the end of a cycle. So somebody who would get the 10 of swords for their yearly reading would probably have a year that was filled with difficult endings, but ones that needed to happen.
Mm,
If
interesting.
that makes sense.
Would it be 10 endings?
Not necessarily. No, but I will also say this for anyone who is an addict, right? The Ten of Swords also represents rock bottom. So it could
Interesting.
also, for someone who is dealing with any kind of addiction slash recovery cycle, like
Hmm.
that actually could be a very positive card because it might be, you know what, I've reached it and now I'm recovering.
Interesting. Interesting. So do you do this every year on your birthday?
I don't. I haven't in a while. I typically recommend it to people. But this year I might. I'm actually considering it, considering I there's so much change going on in my life right now. I might actually do it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting discussion to say, how does each tarot reader interface with the cards on a personal level? Like some draw a card every day, some draw a card when there's like a moment, that really needs a intuitive, content creation. Like, it's like some people pull it. Like, I mean, I think there's something you said about like over divining or
Yeah,
divining when you don't really want a random element informing a thing. Like, so I think good use of divining is a thing.
I try to be judicious. So a couple of things are going on there. First of all, I don't want to pick a tarot card for chocolate or vanilla or like paper or plastic. Like I feel like those mundane decisions I don't need a card for, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, every once in a while, if I'm like, I'm not really sure, I will pull a card, just like which way do I think this is going to go? Or even not even so much that, not even which way should I go, but in this moment, what do I need to keep in mind? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it'll be a court card. Like let's say I'm not really sure. Like I'm out somewhere and I'm thinking about, oh, I have to get this thing, right? Let's say I pull the Queen of Pentacles. Okay,
Hmm.
I might say, okay, John, you have to be practical about this thing. In other words, you don't necessarily want to buy the most expensive one. It's got to be the one that does the job, but
Hmm.
it doesn't need to be really expensive, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
The other thing is when you do the tarot long enough, your intuition takes over when you don't have the cards in your hand. So a
Hmm.
lot of times, I know for me, when I started reading professionally in 2005, in the first 3 to 6 months after I was reading, 15 or 20 people a week, I started getting a lot of those intuitive feelings without having to pull a card out.
Hmm.
So now I'm very judicious about it.
Interesting. Okay, so I have this book right here. It's called Fantasy Genesis, a creative game for fantasy artists. And what you do
Oh,
is you roll a dice to decide what you're going to draw. So, like, here it is,
oh,
drops, pools, and bubbles. You can roll a dice and decide. So, and then you draw, and you roll another dice. Here's like an emotionless, so like angry, whatever, an angry, whatever. But the point is I think of dice rolls as a lot like, pulling a card, right? Like the
is.
for the nerdy gamer crew, they roll dice in D&D when they need an element of surprise or they want a random, so it's kind of like if you want to learn when to divine and when to not, think, would I roll my dice on this equation or would I not? Because like when
Correct.
people are like, can I like people always want to trade me for a reading? Can I do a tarot reading for you? And then you give me an astrology reading. I'm like, yeah, I'm not open to any random content on my future right now because I got some goals I'm working on and stuff but I'm very judicious in because of my old age in divining, right? But it's like I think the noob is just like roll the dice on this and roll the dice on this and roll the dice on this. And so I that that might be something like I would roll the dice on what to draw, but maybe not. Like if I was making an art piece for somebody that was very specific for them, I probably
Yeah.
wouldn't roll the dice on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think also what I have noticed is that people who are new at the cards, in addition to wanting to draw for a lot of things and read for a lot of people, they also have a tendency to research the card a lot more to look for the meaning that they want.
Oh yeah, interesting.
So there, I call that answer shopping.
Oh, answer shopping.
So let's say you mentioned the tower earlier, right? Not necessarily a bad card, but I call that card shock and awe, right? Because the way that the event is happening is going to be really, really unsettling, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Whether it's good or bad. Okay. So if you pull the tower and you're like, oh, holy shit, I don't know what to do with, I don't know what's going to be, it'd be very easy for you to go online and look up meanings for the tower that are like, well, let me look up something that's not so bad. Like maybe
Right,
I'm gonna
right,
try to,
right.
and so a lot of newbie readers will also answer shop.
Well, and that's the equivalent to in astrology. If you don't like, Mars in your 12th house, you just change your house system and then you're like, oh, no, it's in my 11th. I mean, that
Ah,
this is quite the same, but I want to say something about this. It seems like being an elder is different than just being like a young reader. And part of being an elder is like knowing when things are sacred, know when you should go answer shopping, know when you shouldn't. It's like a lot of that is so much wisdom built over the ages that's why a 20-year-old reader might be good, but it's not the same as getting a reading from like a 50-year-old elder.
yeah, and it's not to say that there is no intrinsic value from someone who's 20 years old and who's reading cards. Not true at all. I actually went to a party in DC a couple of months ago. It was actually an astrology party, and he had astrology cards, like tarot cards that he was using.
Wow.
And he was new at using them, but he has a lot of potential. Like he's one of these guys that he's a 20 something, but he has a lot of potential.
Mm.
Not a lot of wisdom, but a lot of knowledge. And so, like you said, he's one of these people that he could down the road, I think he could do a lot of good things. He had a lot of interesting things to say to me, which I was like, oh, okay. Well, but you're right. I feel like sometimes when people do come to me for a tarot reading and they ask me a question, sometimes my answer to them will be, that's really not a relevant question for you right now. So,
Interesting.
I mean, I'm nice, but I'll sometimes refuse to answer it. Like they'll ask me, is my ex happy or some, that's one of them. And I'm like, not why are we focusing our energy on that? Like, first of all, ethically, I can't answer it. And second of all, why does it matter?
Yeah, I think the wise elder reader would help you frame a good inquiry in the first place. Like that,
Yeah.
it's just like, really, what are you asking the oracle? Be careful on that. Not careful, like careful, but kind of like you want to carry your time with an oracle because, if you ask a good question, the only good results will be produced. Um, so yeah, that's the first trick. And I think with your timing thing, it's like giving a time container as part of that inquiry.
Yeah, and it's good to start off with that and to know what the client wants, but then also know as a reader what time frame you are comfortable reading for.
Hmm.
If you're a new reader, maybe you're only comfortable looking at the next 6 months, and that's fine, you
Hmm.
know. And I
Hmm.
well, I what I will tell anybody who picks up the cards is the reader chooses the client. And so if your client comes up to you and says, "Hey, I want a reading and I want you to look at will I ever whatever," to me, that's a no. Like I would say no. I'm not going to do a will I ever question for you because will I ever is not information that I'm going to have. It's
Hmm.
only within a specific amount of time. Like that's what I'm comfortable reading in.
You know, so when people ask for a transit reading, I'll say to them, I really think it's best to do about 6 months to 1 year because by that time, the planets have moved far enough and your life has changed enough that, it might be nice to revisit a reading. But when I am looking in that 6 to months to a year, I am also looking at like 5 years down the road, like what is Pluto doing and what is Neptune? So I can see the kind of landscape in which that one year is sitting and where things
Yeah.
are going on a larger perspective. And I think, but that's where like creative control comes in when you're on the older style of being a reader, is like you have some control around what you will and won't do or how you will and won't do it. It's almost like being a tattoo artist. Like when you're 20, you'll be like, whatever you want, but when you're like 45, you're like, I am not giving you that tattoo, and there's no way, like I mean, hopefully it gets to be like that. I know I'm kind of getting off topic here, but that's just what's coming up.
No, but but I think that's right. I feel like if you've been doing it a while, you have a you have a better idea of what people are going to be happy with down the road. And then the other thing is you also have the standards that you've kind of built up over the years. So one of them, to kind of go with one of the things that you said, is that, your elder, in my case, I won't read for anybody who's under 17. Like I won't.
Interesting.
The only time I won't, only unless I have a parent or a guardian who says, yes, I want you to read for this person. And I've had that happen plenty of times where a mom or a dad will come to me and say, hey, my daughter's 12 and she'd really like a reading. And
Mm,
it's like, okay, so I will do that reading with certain conditions. And one of those is if I see anything that's way out of line, that I tell the parent or guardian. I'm like, hey, this is what we talked about. They get the skinny on everything I've discussed. Like there
mm,
is no privacy for there is privacy to an extent, but there's no privacy with the guardian. Like I tell the parent or guardian exactly what I told them because I don't want there to be any misunderstandings later
mm,
about anything. If the person's over 17, then fine. I also don't want to read for anybody who is high or drunk. Like if they're,
mm,
because that's that special oracular moment that you were talking about. To me, that's just a waste.
mm,
Like if people have had a drink or two and they're having a good time and they're fine, fine. I'm not saying you got to be stone cold sober,
mm,
right?
mm,
But I've had occasions where people have been just the edge of like, I'm not going to remember this,
mm.
where they've just been a little too drunk. And it's like, no, that's
Yeah,
not.
I can see where tarot would be one of the things you kind of do when you're drunk. I don't know if people are like, can I get a drunk astrology reading? Like that doesn't really happen to me, but I can imagine. I can remember like one time in my career when there was a drunk person, but yeah, I think. Yeah. Um, but as far as the minors thing go, I mean, I wrote an article on this on reading astrology for children and doing it ethically. And I think, divining for children is something that really needs to be considered carefully. And it's very controversial, actually, as to when we do it. And, one of the cases I made in that article was that when you're reading your kid's chart, for example, like there's a double power differential. You're like, I'm your mom and I can see your chart. Like that's actually kind of messed up, in some ways, like, but yeah, I mean, with every case I have of children, I definitely look at like, should the parent be, often I have the parents sit right there in the reading with me. Um,
Mhm.
I did have a case once. I'm not breaking confidentiality because I'm not telling you who it is, but I had a case of like an anorexic teenager, and like no one could figure out how to get her to eat or what was going on, and so like they finally consulted me as like a last ditch effort, and I was able to see in her chart the tightness around. Basically, she was like bound up in the neck and like wouldn't didn't really want to swallow, and like I think it
Oh,
was like a Saturn moon conjunction in Taurus. It was just like really,
I was going to say,
like.
was it Taurus or Venus? That's what I
Yeah, it
was
was
wondering.
like Saturn. So she was like her neck was actually kind of
Oh
tight and like
no.
she just didn't really want to eat. But yeah, but in that case, I think I talked to that child alone because the parents and everyone was like it was like I don't know, it was a conflict of interest to yeah. But I hope I didn't break confidentiality there. No one really knows that
No,
person.
you didn't say the client's name. It's fine.
Yeah, but I will say in that case, I did read for the kid alone because that was the best right choice and best use of services at that case.
Yeah.
But see how it's all case by case. It really depends, I guess.
Yeah, I think for me, my main concern is that I don't want, especially on a spiritual level, I don't want anyone accusing me of having undue influence over a child's spiritual path, really.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I've never had anyone accuse me of it, but I really don't want that.
Mm.
For the most part, most of them, the ones that I've had, their parents have had readings with me, and they know what kind of person I am, and they know that I'm never going to steer their child wrong, which is a great confidence boost for me. But at the same time, I'm that's why I'm always very careful about what I say to clients, but I'm even more careful about what I say to any client who's a minor,
Yeah,
because
it's funny. One time I had a teenager and I overstimmed her, which I remember astrology just literally overwhelmed her. And I remember after that, I really changed my teenager readings to be like, here's the nail polish of the colors of your chart. Like, I really started to tweak what information I even brought to children, and started to go more with their developmental level, and that seemed to help. Because, like, really, what is this supposed to be like a magical experience with a magical, person? And so it's like, what is magical to the 17-year-old is just very different than the 25-year-old.
Yeah, and I mean many of them have grown up wanting to know about this stuff. They've seen it on TV or they've seen it in the movies, and they are fascinated by it. Some of them, even some of the ones who are a little younger, have come to me and said, I've always been interested in tarot. And so when they come and they've got all this enthusiasm, it's nice. But again, they're minors, and we're trying to be super careful about how we leave them when we're done with them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Gotta be responsible.
Nice.
But
Did you
when,
want to, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Did you want to talk about Scorpio?
I do. I just quickly want to mention the couple of ways that you can time with tarot. So, in addition to setting up a time frame for a tarot reading, so briefly, you can use the number of a tarot card to time things. So you could pull like a two, and it could be 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. That's one way you could do it. Another way that you can use the tarot is you can use, for example, percentages. So if someone says to me, hey, I'm looking for a new job, for example, and I can say to them, okay, well, what kind of salary are you looking for? And they can tell me. And if, for example, if I pull a five, that's about the middle of the road. So I can say, okay, you're probably going to get paid about what you're getting paid now. But if it's a seven, maybe it's 20% more, or two factors more than what they're getting paid. If
Hmm.
it's a four or three, maybe they're getting paid a little bit less. So
Hmm.
you can kind of use that too a little bit with percentages. That's not exactly timing, but you can use numbers for that. With astrology, what you can do is all of the major arcana cards are resonate, have a correspondence with either a planet or a sign of the zodiac. And
Hmm.
so, for example, with the Emperor, that's Aries. And so if I pull a timing card and it's the Emperor, then I can know that's going to happen during Aries Sun, as a for example.
Hmm.
And then you can also dig in a little deeper with the pips. So if you were to take the suits two, three, four, for example, of Pentacles, because it's Earth, the two, three, and four of each one of the suits represents the cardinal deacons. The five, six, and seven represents the fixed signs, the three deacons of the fixed signs, and then eight, nine, and 10 represents the three deacons of the mutable signs. So, for
Hmm.
example, if I pick the 10 of Pentacles, that's the last 10 degrees of Virgo, for example.
Hmm.
So you can make it, you can actually get pretty good about timing things with the tarot
Hmm. Hmm.
way, with astrology, if you know astrology well.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting.
A little more complicated, but worth a look if you have people who are astrologers who are into tarot as well.
Yeah, thanks for that tip. Yeah, I'm sure that that's something that an advanced tarot reader knows maybe is the timing techniques, whereas maybe just the newbies don't necessarily know that. Or is that something you learn in Tarot 101, or how do you learn
Oh
that?
no, that last one is something I've learned. That's a much more advanced technique that I learned. But also for astrologers, there's also a layout that's a 12 house layout. It's 12 cards in a circle, each one representing a house.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
the house as well, you can use that too. And I really like that one as well.
interesting. Cool.
Yeah.